Deep within a remote wilderness lies a forest so dangerous it's shrouded in terrifying tales. Beasts lurking in the shadows, creatures so vicious that the slightest scent or sound of a human is enough to send them into a bloodthirsty frenzy. No one dares enter, because those who do are torn apart, their remains too scattered to even be counted. But what happens when a young girl, all alone, stumbles into this very forest, unaware of the horror that awaits? Meanwhile, a couple, Jane and Anna, set off on a getaway to celebrate their first anniversary. Their destination? A secluded spot called Black Trailer, a place Jane holds dear. He's visited it for years and wants to share its quiet beauty with Anna, the woman he hopes to spend his life with. However, upon reaching the national park's entrance, their excitement quickly fades. A stern-faced ranger informs them that the park is closed for the day. Disappointed, Jane remembers an alternate entrance, one rarely used and largely forgotten. He asks the ranger about it. The ranger confirms its existence, but warns that the path winds through the heart of the forest, a route most people avoid. Yet Jane, confident and nostalgic, brushes off the warning. He declines the offer of a map, assuring Anna he knows the area like the back of his hand. They drive off, eventually arriving at a serene lake that borders the forest. To reach their camping spot, they must cross the water by boat. Anna, distracted by her phone, barely notices the landscape around her. Irritated, Jane chastises her for being glued to her screen, even in a place like this. Chastened, Anna slips her phone into her bag, and together they push off into the lake, gliding quietly toward the opposite shore. But just as they dock and step out of the boat, Jane stumbles. His foot twists sharply on a rock, and pain shoots up his leg. He winces but waves it off, insisting it's nothing. Meanwhile, Anna had packed an emergency kit just in case. It had bear repellent spray, a flare, and some food. She was nervous. Being in such a big forest scared her. It was her first time camping, and the thought of wild animals made her uneasy. But when she saw a few other campers nearby, she felt a little better. At least they weren't completely alone. Jane and Anna picked a nice spot and set up their tent. After they were done, Jane told Anna there was a lake nearby and suggested they go there to take a bath. At first, Anna wasn't sure, but Jane convinced her. They ended up having a good time and enjoyed the peaceful surroundings. As the sun began to set, they knew they needed to start a fire. Jane went into the woods to gather firewood and asked Anna to wait at the camp. When he came back, he saw Anna talking to a man he didn't know. The man was holding several fish. He introduced himself as Brad and said he often helps campers in the area. Brad was about to leave, but Anna invited him to stay and have dinner with them. He agreed. Jane wasn't happy about this. He quietly went to the tent, and Anna followed him, asking what was wrong. Jane told her he didn't trust strangers and that he had planned this trip so they could spend some time together, just the two of them. Anna realized he had a point. Just then, they saw Brad getting ready to leave. It was getting late, and they didn't think it was safe for him to go alone, so they asked him to stay after all. Jane cooked the fish, and the three of them had dinner together. But as the night went on, Brad's behavior started to get strange. He began asking awkward and inappropriate questions about their relationship. Then he started going to the bathroom right in front of them without any shame. When that didn't seem to get him enough attention, he took out some alcohol and started drinking. After finishing dinner, Brad finally got up to leave. But before going, he threw a question at Jane, clearly trying to annoy him. "By the way," he said, "why did you get so upset with your wife when I showed up earlier?" Jane replied calmly but firmly, "Because you didn't seem like the kind of person I could trust. And I was right. So now please go." Brad didn't say anything else and walked off into the dark. Even though he was gone, Jane couldn't relax. The thought of Brad coming back in the middle of the night kept bothering him. Anna tried to calm him down. "It's fine," she said gently. "Let's just sleep. We have a long trek ahead of us tomorrow." Early the next morning, they packed their things and started their hike. Today's destination was a beautiful waterfall deep in the forest. Jane had even planned a special surprise for Anna once they got there. But as they walked, something strange happened. Jane noticed large footprints on the path, much bigger than any animal he recognized. He didn't know what could have made them, and he decided not to mention it to Anna, not wanting to scare her. A little further along, Jane suddenly changed direction, taking them on a shortcut that went deeper into the forest. It was a path only he knew. But the sun was starting to set, and they wouldn't make it to the waterfall before dark, so they decided to stop and camp again. That evening, Jane's leg began to hurt badly. The injury from earlier had gotten worse. Anna helped clean the wound and wrapped a bandage around it with care. After that, they both got into the tent and tried to sleep. But that night, something felt off. Anna woke up suddenly, feeling as if someone was watching them. She looked around the dark forest and was sure she saw movement near the trees, like someone peeking into their camp. Her first thought was that Brad had come back and was up to something creepy. She shook Jane awake and whispered what she saw, but Jane, still half asleep, tried to reassure her. "It's nothing," he said. "Just the wind blowing through the trees. Maybe some leaves falling. Don't worry. Try to get some sleep." In the morning, Jane was right because they find a broken branch of a tree in front of the camp. It might have fallen due to the storm, or it might be something else. What do you think? Now both of them start walking again. But today, in the beginning itself, Anna feels something like this, which was very scary. Actually, there was a dead body of a deer, which was eaten very brutally, seeing which she gets very scared. But Jane explains to her that this is a jungle. All this is common here. That's why we are getting late. In the middle of the journey, Jane shows her some berries which he used to eat in his childhood. Now he gives them to Anna to eat too, after which they finally reach the place for which they were walking for 2 days. But what is this, friends? There is neither a waterfall nor a lake here. Seeing which Jane was also surprised that how can this happen? Then Anna asks, "When did you come here last time?" He told that in school time. Yes, friends, you thought right. Jane has lost his way, and it does not take them much time to understand this. They do not even have a map so that they can go out because Jane knew everything. That is why he confidently said that he does not want to take a map from the ranger, but now he needs only one thing the most, that is a map. Meanwhile, Anna checks her bag so that she can call someone. But what is this? Her phone is not there. Seeing this, Jane said that he kept her phone in the car because he does not want her to come here and use her phone. Anna was furious. She turned to Jane and shouted, "Why did you even bring us here? What was so important about that waterfall? Now look, we're lost. There's no one around to help us, and you don't even realize how dangerous this forest is. There could be huge bears out here." Jane's face tightened with frustration. "I brought you here for a reason," he snapped. "I wanted to propose to you by the waterfall. I had a ring. I wanted to tell you how much I love you, but now everything's ruined. Still, I'll figure something out. I'll find another way." But Anna, still burning with anger, shouted louder, "This is all your fault. We're stuck in the middle of nowhere, and you don't even know where we're going." They both fell silent, the weight of the situation finally sinking in. After a while, Anna calmed down and looked at Jane, feeling guilty. "I'm sorry," she said quietly. "I shouldn't have yelled at you like that." Jane gave her a tired smile. "It's okay, but we have to stay here tonight. It's already getting dark." They set up camp again and went to sleep under the cloudy sky. That night it rained heavily. They were so exhausted they didn't even wake up during the storm. But while they slept, something large crept around their tent. A shadow moved in the darkness. Something big was trying to get inside, but for some reason it couldn't. By morning, they woke up to another problem. All their food was gone. Anna stared at the empty bags in shock. "What happened?" she asked. Jane looked around and said, "It was probably a small animal. Don't worry, we'll get back to the car by evening." He tried to sound confident, but the truth was, he had no idea where they were. They walked for hours, lost, with no map and no direction. Jane now regretted not taking the ranger's advice. Finally, tired of wandering, Anna took the lead. Jane followed behind, both of them hoping the way out was somewhere ahead. After walking for a long time, Anna started feeling very thirsty. She drank the last bit of their water. While looking around, she noticed a large hole in the ground. Right away, she understood. It looked like a place where a bear might sleep. That scared her, and she quickly told Jane they needed to leave. She had a reason to worry. 2 days ago, before they even began their hike, she had seen bear footprints. She already knew there were dangerous animals in this forest. That night, they sat in front of the fire, trying to relax. As they talked, Jane asked her gently, "When you were shouting at me earlier, did you really mean all that?" Anna looked at him and said, "No, not at all. I was just so tired from all the walking. And when I realized we were lost, I got scared and angry. I didn't mean to hurt you." Hearing that, Jane smiled softly. He reached into his pocket and brought out the ring, the one he had planned to give her at the waterfall. He held it out to her, but Anna shook her head and said, "Not now. Let's get out of here first. After that, I'll gladly wear it. And yes, I'll marry you." Just then, they heard a deep, scary growl. It sounded like a lion or some big animal nearby. Both of them quickly ran back into their tent. It felt safer than being out in the open. The next morning, Jane carefully unzipped the tent to check outside. What he saw made his heart stop. A huge bear was sitting just a few steps away, eating a dead animal. In simple words, the bear was having breakfast. Jane quickly turned to Anna and gently woke her up without speaking. He motioned with his hands for her to stay still and not make any noise. "If the bear finds out we're in here," he whispered, "we could be in big trouble." They stayed inside, completely quiet, hoping the bear would leave. After a while, Jane slowly opened the tent flap again. The bear was now walking, and it was coming closer to their tent, but it still didn't know they were there. When Anna realized the bear was coming closer, she quickly tried to grab the bear spray from her bag, but in her panic, she made a sudden movement. That was all it took. In the very next moment, the bear roared and ripped through the tent with its powerful claws. It charged inside, and the first thing it grabbed was Anna's arm. Because she was holding the spray and trying to aim it, she screamed in pain as the bear's claws slashed her badly, and she fell to the ground. Seeing this, Jane didn't think twice. He threw himself at the bear to protect her. But how could a man weighing only 50 kilograms fight a 400-kilogram beast? He tried. He really did. But the bear attacked him, biting deep into his leg. Jane cried out in pain, blood pouring from the wound. But just then, Anna saw her chance. Despite her injury, she aimed the spray and hit the bear right in the face. The animal roared and ran off into the forest, disappearing into the trees. Jane collapsed, badly hurt. His skin was turning blue from the blood loss, and he could barely speak. "Anna," he whispered, "I'm not going to make it. I can feel it. You have to run, now, before it comes back." Tears filled Anna's eyes. She shook her head and said, "No, you're not dying. We'll get out of here together." She quickly took a cloth and wrapped it tightly around his wounded leg to stop the bleeding. Then she tried to help him stand. But just as he managed to get to his feet, the bear came back. This time it didn't hesitate. It grabbed Jane and dragged him across the ground right in front of Anna. She screamed and tried to stop it, but it was too late. The bear tore into Jane with terrifying strength, and all Anna could do was watch in horror. Even while dying, Jane used his last breath to say, "Run, Anna, run!" Anna stood there frozen, heartbroken and terrified. This camping trip was supposed to be a happy memory, a beautiful moment together, but now it had turned into a nightmare. Shaking with tears falling down her face, Anna slowly picked up the ring Jane had meant to give her. She looked up and saw the bear again, still feasting on Jane. But she didn't let it stop her. She turned and ran as fast as she could. She didn't look back. She ran until her legs burned and her lungs ached. But then, her foot hit a broken tree trunk. She fell hard, hit her head, and everything went dark. When Anna slowly opened her eyes, her whole body ached. Her head throbbed, and her clothes were torn, but she was alive. The first thing she did was pull the ring out of her pocket and put it on her finger. Her hands shook, but she wore it proudly. Tears welled up in her eyes. This was meant to be a happy memory, she thought. She stood up and called out for help, but there was no one. Not a single voice answered her. She was completely alone. But Anna knew one thing now. No one was going to save her. She had to survive on her own. Suddenly, she heard that terrible growling sound again, the same one that had haunted her since the night before. Her heart raced. She didn't wait. She quickly climbed the nearest tree, remembering something she had once read. Bears usually don't climb trees because of their heavy weight. Up in the branches, she wrapped her arms around herself and stayed quiet. The forest was cold and dark, but she didn't move. She stayed there all night, too afraid to come down. The next morning, she woke to the distant sound of a helicopter. Her heart leapt with hope. She screamed. She waved her arms. She cried for help, but her voice was too soft. The helicopter passed right over her and kept going. She had tried everything, but no one had seen her. Wiping her tears, she climbed down and kept walking. After a while, she found something. Fresh, clean water flowing from a stream. She ran to it and drank deeply, finally quenching her thirst. She picked a few berries nearby and ate them slowly. But just as she began to feel a little relief, she saw it again. The same bear was walking toward her from the trees. Her heart stopped. She dropped everything and ran. She ran as fast as she could, pushing past branches, jumping over roots, breath sharp in her throat. Then she reached the edge of a cliff. There it was, the waterfall, the very same one Jane had promised to show her, the one where he was going to propose. But now, Jane was gone. The moment was gone, and the dream they had come here to create was over. Now Anna knew she had to save her life, no matter what. She came up with an idea. What if she could lure the bear toward her and then jump to the side of the cliff at the last second, making the bear fall into the water below? It was risky, but it might work. She blew the emergency whistle loudly, hoping the sound would draw the bear. Then she slowly began to climb down toward the edge of a large rock, but the surface was slippery, and her foot suddenly slipped. She fell hard, and with a sharp crack, one of the bones in her leg broke. She screamed in pain, but she was still alive, and that gave her strength to keep going. Anna didn't stop. She knew if she rested, she might faint, and the bear could find her easily. so she tied some sticks around her injured leg to keep it stable. Then she lit the flare, and using its light, she kept walking through the night, injured and exhausted. By morning, her body was giving up. She had no more energy left. Her lips were dry and cracked. Her broken leg could no longer take even a few steps. Finally, she collapsed and fainted. When Anna opened her eyes again, she saw something that gave her hope. A deer standing a few feet away. She smiled faintly. Where deer live, bears usually don't. That meant she had made it out of the deep forest. And yes, just a few steps ahead, she saw something even more incredible. The same boat she and Jane had left at the shore. That boat was now her last chance to live. With her injured hands and feet, she dragged herself into the boat and slowly pushed it into the lake. Bit by bit, she made her way across. And after what felt like forever, she reached the other side. But she had no energy left. She collapsed on the shore. Just then, a man nearby was talking to some tourists, explaining the park rules. When he saw Anna, he ran toward her right away. It was Brad. Yes, the same Brad from before. He picked Anna up and called for help immediately. And that's where the story ends.